This is going to be a lot to ingest. So bear with me as I go through all this information. So yesterday there was it was originally posted as a meeting, but it was technically a hearing. So the public was not allowed inside. All we could do was stand outside the gate. I followed it live on Twitter because Megan Cuniff of LA Mag, she was live tweeting all this. And I was giving her contradicting. So anytime any of the city council spoke, I was giving her the contradicting information as to what they were saying. Okay, so there's a lot to ingest here. And then the Los Feliz Ledger was nice enough to basically summarize it into an article. Otherwise, this video was originally going to be a recap of all the tweets and giving my opinions. So to catch the rest of you up to speed, I'm going to read over this article kind of quickly. And then I'm going to switch over to Megan. I'm going to skim over some of her tweets. I will have links provided down below in the description. And I'm going to give my thoughts as a homeless person, by the way. Okay. So let's get started. So the council member says city and the county incapable of solving homelessness, seeks court consent decree. Los Angeles City Council member Mike Bonin blasted the city and county as structurally incapable of responding to the region's homelessness crisis and called for a consent decree under the supervision of the federal judge overseeing attempts to deal with the situation. We need to admit that the city and the county are structurally incapable of responding with appropriate urgency and vigor to our homelessness crisis. It must enter into a judicial consent decree under the supervision of the U.S. District Court Judge David O. Carter. Bonin said in an article he wrote on the online publishing platform Medium. A consent decree is legally binding agreement submitted in writing to a court. Bonin said the homeless crisis is a matter of life and death, but the city and county government's diffuse power means that there is no accountability for slow response to the problem. Many city and county officials with great effort and determination have implemented successful projects and programs that are moving people off the streets and into housing. But it's still not enough. Even as the number of projects and programs increase, homelessness increases even faster, he said. Carter has called an urgent meeting at a Skid Row Women's Center tomorrow to discuss what he has called worsening conditions in the city's failure to respond to recent rains that threaten lives on downtown streets. Combined with the COVID-19 pandemic and soaring mental health and substance abuse issues, homelessness in the region is comparable to a significant natural disaster in Southern California with no end in sight, Carter wrote Sunday in an order filed in federal court. Bonin noted that it's too easy for a single person or organization to block the city and county's efforts to solve the crisis because they don't want shelters in their neighborhood. The consent decree would offer a better way, according to Bonin. The decree should be clear and specific, with several phases. And if the city or county fail to meet any of the decree's requirements, the judge should have the authority to compel action, Bonin wrote in the Medium article. Bonin suggested the decree should require, among other things, replacing the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, known better as LAHSA, with an agency with real power. Bonin cited past consent decrees in Los Angeles, which he said brought significant and positive changes, including creating affordable housing units when the 105 freeway was constructed, forcing the city's transportation authority to improve its bus system in the 1990s, and which reforms were created for the Los Angeles Police Department after the Rampart scandal, which was exposed widespread corruption in the anti-gang unit, also in the 1990s. Tens of thousands of unhoused Angelenos need a path off the streets. Our neighborhoods need a path out of this dystopian crisis, Bonin said. The city and the county need a path into faster, more aggressive, more universal action. The consent decree is that path. Carter is overseeing a federal lawsuit filed by the LA Alliance for Human Rights, seeking to compel Los Angeles City and the county officials to quickly address the homelessness crisis. The plaintiff, a coalition of nonprofit organizations, service providers, small business owners, residents, and community leaders, has won an agreement between the city and county to provide 6,700 beds, of which 6,000 are due by April. The agreement was the result of an injunction issued by the court ordering the humane relocation of people living over, under, and near freeways. Oh boy. So that's the start. Okay. So to give my thoughts. Okay. Where do I start, I guess, is the question, right? Because I am very verbal and public about this on Twitter, especially with everything going on and me expressing my opinions, reaching out to get answers for my concerns, so on and so forth, right? Okay, so where should I start? Let me go to Twitter real quick. Let me pull up one of my recent tweets, actually. I'll read his article in a moment. So, I go to Twitter. Okay, so I reached out to Mike Bonney, the LA City Council member. I reached out. I read his article, and I reached out to him. Okay, he wants a consent decree, and I agree with him. And I expressed my gripes to him about it, or in a weird way, why we shouldn't be in a hurry for a consent decree. Like I told him, I said, if I may borrow your eyes for a moment, I agree with your article. PRK works when it works. My gripe with PRK is that is not a governing body to oversee and investigate serious allegations. So when it's not looked into, people suffer. CES, the coordinated entry system, doesn't work. Nobody reaches out. It seems like all they use it for is to see if the homeless person's name is on the list, to see what other agencies they have worked with. When figures come from data released by the Los Angeles County Emergency Operations Center, tallies are updated each Tuesday, showing 611 beds open in PRK. Social workers are out of the loop and told nothing is open. Mishandling of data or info. The errors in the current system can be corrected with hardlined info directly to social workers, outreach teams, DPSS, Department of Social Services. How is the media more in the know before social workers and outreach teams seems silly because it's contradicting? Finally, I'm worried with all this funding from FEMA. 20 years ago, you could easily get a 2-week motel voucher from DPSS. Today, not anymore. Give something for DPSS to handle easily. Please understand these tweets and opinions are from the eyes of a homeless person whom's been at this grind for 8 years already. I can confirm that no local services have been of any real help. I've had to reach out to the internet to get where I am now. It just seems easy to blame the city, county, or state, but nobody brings up some of the roots of the system currently in place with CES, PRK, and DPSS, and it's not working. And I thank him for his time to read all this. As you can see, he hasn't responded to me. Yeah, which is to be expected. Yeah, he's easy to be public spoken about, which this article covers. It's easy for him to be public spoken. Now, I'm going to go over the tweets of the live coverage of the meeting, and I will hopefully find my comments at the time that contradict some of the stuff that was being said. So she starts off with, showing pictures, saying she's here at the Downtown Women's Center on Skid Row for the 10 a.m. hearing with Judge Carter. It looks like we'll be in the tent. Tight limits on attendance, apparently. I'll tweet updates on this thread here. We've got a couple of federal marshals here making their presence known, but everything is very calm right now. The gate is to the law is closed, and Judge Carter and Special Master Mitchell are getting ready. Judge Carter is visiting with the several people, including Bales, plaintiff's attorney Elizabeth Mitchell, and Hugh Hewitt, who goes so far back with the Carter he remembers being thrown out of his courtroom 25 years ago. Wow. Just claiming my seat, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The claim has blah, blah, blah. All right. Carter says anyone not complying with social distancing orders will be escorted out. Will be escorted to the gate by the U.S. Marshals. Carter says today's hearing, I think she meant has, but has little to do with the June settlement regarding the 6,700 bids by April. This agreement has now prompted much larger questions. He hopes in April the court will be receiving a very good news. The much larger question looming regarding the disproportionate number of racial minorities who are homeless and the vulnerable of homeless women who are subject to abuse and rape and violence, Carter says. The mic was cutting out and screeching, but so it just fixed everything, of course. Carter touches on his order for briefing and his desire to explore the court's structural equitable remedy power, where he can do it. What can he do if politicians fail to act and use their powers to address the homeless crisis? Carter's calling on Go Skid Row Go, which is a nonprofit organization, to speak now, along with other members of the Skid Row Advisory Council. General Jeff just welcomed us all to Skid Row and describes himself as a proud resident. There's a lot. Okay. Jeff said for some of this, this is a, Jesus, I'm sorry. I'm trying to, my brain's interpreting it the way it should be said versus the way she posted it word for word. Jeff said for some, this a joyous occasion just to have this kind of court hearing in Skid Row. He thanks Keldon, Judge Carter, for acting quickly. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to pronounce this Keldon. It's Kevin D. Leon, I believe is what the case stands for. Judge Carter and acting and hearing the cries of the people on Skid Row. There are women 20 feet from Jeff right now who need help, he says. Majority of Skid Row population is black women. And there's an irony to the fact that so many are outside the Women's Center, Jeff says. General Jeff criticizes Mayor of LA, Eric Garcia. It's very unfortunate that we have a lame duck mayor that's not even here to talk to the people and be part of the proceedings. We are highly disappointed. We can go on and on. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a second. Okay, I'm going to stop at this tweet for a second, and I'm going to pull up a video for you of what the mayor thinks of the homeless people, in case you're out of the loop. Now, if I scroll down my timeline a little bit, I have the original video. I saved it just in case, Twitter decided to delete it. Here it is. Here we go. So it was posted by Vishal P. Singhai, the mayor of Los Angeles, mayor of LA, and I'm going to read his exact words, is a sociopath who views unhoused people as horse excrement. Under his leadership, around 4 unhoused people die per day. This video is leaked from a private internal meeting. Actually, give me 1 second. My audio is apparently not working. Wow. Technical difficulties. Nice. Okay, this should fix it. If I can restart it.
So the city is kind of like at the Rose Parade. You know those folks who are dressed up in the cowboy outfits, but they're behind the horses, scooping up everything that falls out of their rear ends? That's kind of what the city's role is when it comes to homelessness. Like, we aren't necessarily feeding or producing it, but we are having to clean it up. And let me tell you, it is tougher and tougher. If you had told me 4 or 5 years ago that we would have put together the first plan ever on homelessness, the county would have, and we were working together instead of at odds, which we did for decades, that we would pass the largest measure for housing on homelessness at this.
So yes, you heard it in the mayor's own words. He compares homelessness to horse poop. Okay? He claims to be a Mexican American. And by this fact, I'm personally embarrassed because I myself am a Hispanic. And this is appalling. Anyway. So that kind of give you an idea as to why the mayor wasn't there. But to be honest, okay, that's one of the ideas. But to be honest and fair, okay, because you can't have accurate reporting without being honest and fair, right? So if I scroll down just a little bit, I might have to go to her Twitter directly. Okay, yeah, I might have to go to the news reporter's Twitter directly for the clip. Yeah, I have to go to her Twitter directly. Because she is a news reporter, she posts a lot. But it's really important that you hear both sides, obviously. Otherwise, you know. Oh, here it is. His official response, the mayor's official response as to why he couldn't make it.
I had a great meeting with Judge Carter yesterday, face to face. When I did see that order, I am.
What he means by yesterday, this is the day before yesterday, Wednesday. Today's Friday. This is on Wednesday. You had this meeting with him, or supposedly talked to Judge Carter on Wednesday.
Meeting with Judge Carter yesterday, face to face. When I did see that order, I am unable to come tomorrow and let him know that, but I said, let's just sit down, the two of us. And I love Judge Carter. I think he's fond of me. I'll let him say it. He said it many times. And I'm very proud of the progress that we have made, not only to meet the 6,700 additional units and housing solutions we said, but to surpass that already, where we have over 8,000 identified, over half of them done just a few months into the 18 months we have to do that. This is immensely hard work, but when you look at, there isn't hardly a week goes by with not one or two either groundbreakings or openings of new permanent housing, of new shelters that are opening, of tiny home villages like the one that I went to in Councilmember Krikorian's district in CD2, where there was a previous encampment. There's now wonderful tiny homes right along close to the intersection of where the red line and the orange line meet. There is distinct progress, and like the judge, I share that same sense of urgency. We have to keep adding that, which is why I talked about the urgency of moving forward with Project Roomkey, the 100% reimbursement from FEMA, et cetera. None of us can be satisfied. And in terms of responsibility, it's not news to you or to anyone else. Even though I'm really one of many actors, 3 or 4 years ago, I said I take full responsibility for the response, and I hope that we all do. Your last point was they're threatening to take over. The court doesn't have the jurisdiction to do that at this point. In fact, the case hasn't even begun. This is about the negotiations we can have. Had a wonderful talk with the judge, and I hope that the city will be able to come to a global settlement with the plaintiffs that are bringing this lawsuit, because I think we share the same things. Get more people off the streets even more quickly. There's no city in America doing more. But I share the same perspective as an Angelino, as most Angelinos. Then why do we still have so many tents? We've got to keep doubling down on those solutions and that sense of urgency.
Okay. So it's kind of hard to believe when he says something like that. But weeks prior, comparing homeless to horse. Yeah. To be honest with you, he doesn't care. And that's putting it politely. But let's continue. But now you know why Mayor Garcia or Garcetti couldn't show up to this hearing. Okay? Yeah, actually, a matter of fact, I think I made that comment some time down the line to her. So, the first comment I respond to of her coverage is General Jeff calls for the disbandment of LA Homeless, which is LAHSA, which is the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. He says he doesn't see unified action throughout the city, but he does. Wow. Brain, stop trying to correct her sentences. But he does the coroner's trucks that pull into the neighborhood. The solutions need to spread out. And I do believe I commented her on this. Oh man. I didn't know opening the thread would not giving me my direct comment. Okay. If I have to paraphrase, actually, hold on. Can I just click on comments to see what the comments? Oh no, I can't. Okay. To paraphrase what I said, I can't, obviously, I can't pull up my own comment at the moment. But to paraphrase what I said is that basically I agree LAHSA needs to be disbanded. Okay. To understand why is that LAHSA was created under the joint powers of the state and county, more so between the county and cities, to try to streamline resources without having to get approval. Try to remove some of the red tape. Well, it didn't work. It's a failed organization. Okay, unfortunately, Heidi, who is at the helm of LAHSA, takes all the brunt end of it, along with the fact that there was a LAHSA audit that shows LAHSA was meeting way under their goals. Basically, they're getting paid good money to sum it up, they're getting paid good money to do nothing. Okay. Now, it was more or less is what I said to her. So Carter welcomes Kevin, whose district includes Skid Row. Music is playing outside the tent somewhere, which Carter acknowledges and says he may need more of in court. By the way, the court appreciates the record. The record appreciates for the record the music, the judge says. LA Councilman and possible mayor hopeful Kevin D. Leon begins by citing his work 6 days ago with Carter here on Skid Row. There are neighborhoods or residents who know the homeless crisis better than District 14, D. Leon says. Skid Row is ground zero. D. Leon says his district has more unhoused individuals than Phoenix, Houston, and Chicago. The number is 5, 4, and 3 most populous cities in America. De Leon references an incident last Friday, which ended with Carter and him putting a few homeless women up in hotel rooms, but didn't give the dirty details. But he says that incident transcends Skid Row and highlights the bigger problem. De Leon says ending the Los Angeles homelessness crisis involves rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing requires property and land. We need a value for value, and we need it now, not a decade down the road, De Leon says. He's correct, but at the same time incorrect. To explain something, okay, so I have to pull up another instance of Twitter, or you know what? Actually, I'll go to my messages. And I'll go here to departure room key, blah blah blah. You can see where I reached out to the county, blah blah blah. Here we go. LAHSA's tweet. LAHSA claims chronically homeless person can use up to $40,448 in services every year. In 8 years, I've seen less than $100. Less than $100 in services. Now, if you take that number and you combine it with what De Leon's saying, right? technically, Lhasa has the money to house 2 people in a motel room at the cost of about 25 grand a year because the state still has a 28-day stay limit. Okay? At 25 grand a year, that's 2 people. Okay? For less than 40 grand per person. Way under that. They have the money right now to do it. Why they're not doing it is beyond me. So his plan or his proposal is dumb. They can easily take that money that Lhasa is spending. Okay, they're claiming it costs us $20,000 per person to house someone in a shelter, but a chronically homeless person can take up to 40 grand. That's insane. Okay, and I can tell you for a fact, I've seen less than $100 in 8 years. That's insane. With 40 grand, you know what? To tell you the truth, for a moment, to stop here for a second, to tell you the truth, with 40 grand, if Lhasa were to say, hey, we're going to cut you a check for 40 grand, I say thank you and get the heck out of California. Because at least with 40 grand, you know what? I can go and buy a trailer in New Jersey for like 25, 30 grand and still have change left over. But, you know, hey, you know, I guess my ideas are not worth considering. I should really run for mayor to solve this problem. Anyway, D. Leon's families. What? Okay. D. Leon. Families are living on the streets. Okay, he's full of shit. Families are not living on the streets. Okay? You can sit inside the DPSS office Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to to almost 5 p.m. They kind of start kicking everyone out around 4:30. Okay? You sit in there for a day or two. Okay? You're going to hear this family coming in. It doesn't matter if it's both parents or single parents with children. They're going to come in and say whatever reason why they're there. It's because they got evicted. You know, they're homeless for XYZ reason. Just started that day. Usually because they got an eviction and they need assistance. DPSS immediately hooks them up with a hotel voucher. It's like, okay, here's your hotel voucher for right now. Come back in 1 to 2 weeks for your first meeting to get you set up for WIC, blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, they're not even homeless for a day. I'm dead ass serious. They're not homeless for even a day. Or maybe they are, if they get kicked out in the middle of the night. Okay, maybe they're homeless only for a couple of hours. Families are not on the street as bad as he's trying to describe it. Literally. It's amazing how rapid and streamlined that families get. And I get it because they have a kid. You know, which in a weird way kind of proves that the priority of helping the homeless is the less priority, at least through DPSS. But yeah, he's literally lying. And I find that very frustrating and irritating. So, anyway, continue. The Elon families are living on the streets, and LA's institutions have normalized this. People are dying every single day. A lot of artful rehashing of the crisis that brought us all here. DeLeon says he doesn't believe the consent decree is necessary yet. Oh, it's more than well than necessary. We need a North Star to provide a direction and path forward. Yeah, I should be that North Star. But that's my opinion. One thing to keep in mind is that, okay, yeah, she mentions that the article. But one thing to keep in mind, and keep in mind there will be a link to this Twitter thread. Keep in mind is that while a lot of people act like consent decree is a settlement will rid of LA of any all conflict regarding homelessness, this hasn't been the case for Orange County. She is correct. It hasn't been the case for Orange County. But that's a whole different, it's similar but different situation. Carter, talking to Kevin DeLeon, is discussing pushback he's heard from prominent LA people over shelter locations. That's Brown versus Plata again, where the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed a trial judge's bold order that California reduce its prison population. This is a key by key case. So, okay, to understand, I understand what she's saying. First of all, shelter locations are awful. Okay, I cannot stay in a shelter because the nearest shelter to me is literally for people who have exited drug rehab, and by referral only. Okay, that is literally the nearest shelter. I cannot stay in Skid Row because that puts me 40 plus miles away from work, my storage, and mailbox. I cannot afford to continuously make that trip back and forth. Yes, shelter locations are in the worst locations possible, literally. And that's because cities don't want them. To me, a city shouldn't have a say where a shelter is. Okay, if it's a county resource, that's it. It's a county building. They should be declared as county buildings. But whatever, especially if they're ran by the county instead of nonprofits. And you take that out of the hands of nonprofits. That's the more direct approach. You know, and you're going to get a lot of pushback from cities. You know, and then as a county, you have to push back. We're like, well, you know, there's a lot of things that can go horribly wrong. So I understand why they haven't done that yet. But I'm personally sick of seeing cities having a say in it, to be honest. Because some of those homeless people come from their very own cities. So they're not even helping their own residents, technically. Carter asks, population, this is a key case. Carter asks if he sees an inability to muster that kind of difficult decision making and willingness to allow any kind of special interest or people of, say, more privileged obstruct efforts, what should the court's response be to that? Kevin DeLeon is saying something about micro projects in their relation to macro and global projects. Thinking emoji. Regarding court power, obviously you have those cards and you will use them as you see fit, he tells Carter. Carter, by the way, is the judge. Carter, is there a recognition that women are particularly vulnerable? And is there a plan to address that inequality? Carter says he consistently hears on the streets that those with access and power have a greater voice in the government than impoverished. Okay. I ended up telling Megan that the truth to that situation is that the only way a homeless woman gets off the street, and I'm dead serious, I'm not saying this in a disrespectful tone, I'm saying it as in this is the true harsh reality. Thanks to DPSS, basically streamlines families off the street. If she gets deliberately pregnant and has the kid, decides to keep the kid, okay, knowing that right now in her current situation, she can't afford it, but keeps the kid anyway, to get ahead of the pack, she has no other choice but to keep that kid, to bring a kid into the world to help herself and now take care of another new life. That is the only streamlined process. And there is some women who have done this deliberately. That's why they don't claim who the father is. And that's the dark, grim truth that people need to be aware of. Okay? And it has everything to do with how the system is set up to help people. You think it's first come, first serve? It's not. Okay? based on my personal experience in the 8 years of being homeless and the observations I've made and the people I have talked to find out, hey, how did you get this hotel room? Hey, who's paying for it? Hey, what program are you going through? You know, yada, 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 right? Okay. Families are streamlined into hotel rooms, paid for by DPSS. Families. If you're not a drug addict or alcoholic, but are physically disabled, you're streamlined off the streets. It might be group housing, it might be a shelter, or it might be a hotel room. You are a senior citizen or elderly who is homeless. Okay, but you have to understand something. In order for the elderly to become homeless, it's because they were probably most likely previously were at a senior home who was taking all of their money, meaning either it was their pension or Social Security, to make up for the difference of what their insurance was covering. Okay, so they literally saw no money. Maybe if they saw, if anything, like $20. If anything. So those seniors got fed up and said, F this, I'm leaving, and I'm taking my check with me. And that's what they did. So it was literally an option of keeping their money or being not homeless but having no money. So elderly and seniors get streamlined off the streets real quick, unless their unwillingness to pay, unless their unwillingness to cough up the whole check, then they're not. So you have to understand that at a glance, yeah, it's easy to say, oh, well, it's messed up that these seniors are homeless. We should be taking care of our elders. What you need to understand is the system that's in place that is supposed to take care of them takes all their money away. Okay. APS will investigate grandchildren, their children of like financial abuse, when we should be investigating these institutions who are designed to take care of them in their twilight years of financial abuse, but we do nothing about it. We turn a blind eye. Okay, we fix these problems. Well, if you fix the problems for senior homes, no more seniors homeless. You fix the problem with how the homeless, it doesn't get equality in terms of being streamlined off the streets, you solve that problem. You take all the money that LAHSA is claiming they're spending of $40,000 a year, you solve that problem. Okay. But the issue stems from the county and city council for being inactive and taking incentive to correct these problems. Okay. So, inequality, yes, to an extent. Vulnerable, yes. But to say it's not an easy fix would be a bold-faced lie. It's a very simple fix. They're just getting lazy. Okay, so to continue. So Helio Solis is on the mic now. We're at a very historic moment in our time. And to be here right now, today at the Downtown Women's Center, I think it's proactive conversation that we have to have, not just today, but every single day. This reporter makes a comment I like, and I'll get to it here in just a second. In the last minute or so, Supervisor Solis has said the word proactive at least 3 more times. The Women's Center does proactive work, but still a lot of women are overlooked, Solis says. We can't just look at going through the bureaucracy. You find council members you can work with, and you come up with concepts and ideas. I think that's where we have to go today, Salas says. I'm just spitballing here, but I think Carter wants action, not concepts and ideas. Yeah, and that's where I like the tweet. Okay, to understand Hilda Salas, okay, my traveling companion and I reached out to Hilda Salas. As a matter of fact, spoke to her directly. Like a month or two prior to any of this meeting ever happening. And Hilda Salas told us, there's nothing I can do for you. After spending months of talking to her homeless liaison, Victor. Months. Matter of fact, I think one of my comments is in here somewhere about that, which I'll get to after I finish reading off this long Twitter thread. Notable that this is the view to my right as I sit hearing unhoused people living in tents not even 10 feet from us right now. That's correct. Solis has a lot to say about the current efforts. Affordable housing and housing for the formerly incarcerated are all important. She looks forward to partnership with the court. The treatment part is, how can I say, proactive. Now, you have to understand, prison inmates who have served at least anywhere from a year to 5 years usually get, before they get out, they get put into like a halfway home to help assist get back onto their feet. Majority of them. Because not many employers are willing to hire ex-cons in California. So they have programs dedicated to working with them and working with employers who are more than willing to, hire ex-cons, but these are usually minimum wage paying jobs. Like, you understand, like you're gonna put two together and be like, wow, they must have became criminals because they were desperate for money. And if you give them a minimum wage job, they're going to get desperate again, rinse and repeat. But, no one thinks about that. All right. So, Solis, I think LA can be a bigger petri dish and really provide the kind of substance and credibility to really show we can do things here. Hashtag petri dish, Elias Solis. Care first, jail last. That's our motto. Yeah, Sola says. She says she has a lot more to say, but also is willing to wrap it up. There's the buried lead. She thinks we don't need a consent decree right now. One thing all this underscores is that the city attorney don't brief Garcetti and the council members very well about any of this stuff. Carter's briefing is not about consent decree. The consent decree in the Orange County case came through negotiation and settlement. Carter's briefing is about what he should do if the city and LA Alliance plaintiff can't reach an agreement and no consent decree forms. What does Carter do then? Carter asks, how many homeless people have died on Skid Row? Does the city track that? Doesn't sound like it. Now he's back to the Friday incident with tents. All of that good faith I have in local government has to be measured against past broken promises and actions. Carter just called on Mayor Garcetti, who of course is not here. He goes to the mayor's staff and two guys walk into the tent. I pointed out to her, I said, why would Judge Carter call on Mayor Garcetti if Mayor Garcetti, as you heard earlier in this video, proclaimed that him and Carter had their private meeting on Wednesday and knew that Garcetti wouldn't show up today? I guess the technical answer would be that the judge wanted to show up for the record that Garcetti wasn't there. I guess that's the technical answer. Okay. But he should have acknowledged that he knew he wouldn't be here. Judge Carter just got hilariously acknowledged all of this micro and macro government gobbledygook talk everything the court is doing on a micro basis. This is leading to macro action. Carter just threatened the marshals on anyone who photographs the photos he's showing of distressed homeless women on Skid Row. The first camera I see, I own it and I crush it. Michelle is going through the pictures, which are blown up on poster board and from the rainstorm last Friday, 7:30 in the morning. Thank God they've got raincoats. It's a vibrant, wonderful community with a heart, Carter mentions. 3 women in their 70s who Michelle named her grandmas. They were so thrilled to get rooms. Carter's asking Garcetti's guys if there are more people experiencing homelessness on Skid Row now than before. And he's not getting good answers. He's repeating the questions which are issued yesterday in an official court order. This is the kind of painful to watch as Carter goes over every question. He probably already knows the answer here, of course. And Garcetti's guys give this quick, short, scared answers based on reports or no answers at all. I don't have that data in front of me, sir. That's the common quote right now. Carter asks about the tents last Friday. Have those provided relief? I would have to follow with providers, but I would imagine so. Garcetti's guys say, can more be erected? Garcetti's guys say we need be mindful of how things are done so they can be long-term and not just for a weekend. He says Garcetti's announced last night the authorization of more rooms through Project Roomkey. Okay, to give you a quick note on the Project Roomkey. The county released data that says that there's 611 beds available in Project Roomkey. To understand Project Roomkey is that it's supposed to house people like me and elderly who are at risk of catching COVID. Meaning, should we catch COVID, it would be deadly. Because I am asthmatic, which makes my lungs susceptible to catching COVID. And because I'm diabetic, which makes my immune system compromised, meaning, in other words, it takes longer for me to recover. In that sense, I'm not immune compromised. No, my immune system is compromised. Okay, it's supposed to be available to people like me and the elderly, which I'm not in Project Roomkey. I'm paying for all this out of pocket, barely. So, Garcetti's guys say 70 to 80% of homeless population is Black or Latino, and says he personally has experienced homelessness as a Latino man. When she made that comment, I remember tweeting at her specifically, "Oh, really? I like to see his shelter ID card, because when you stay at a shelter, you get an ID card, so this way they have a way to identify you quickly. You know, they're not going to ask for your ID they don't know that. If you get a shelter ID card, then they know you've registered with that shelter. So you have an ID card with that shelter." So I think the guy that said that is full of himself. Carter asks of any advice plan on the city's part to remedy this inequality. Garcetti's guys mentioned interventionists and new roomkey rooms. Carter says include that in the 16th briefing, which is the 16th of this month. Is there a plan that the court can look at and see regarding the inequality of women on the streets? I would strongly suggest to you that today is not a soundbite day. Carter tells Garcetti's guys, one of whom is a deputy chief of staff, Matt Sabasto, or Sasbo. Not very good at pronouncing names. Now the city attorney of LA is up. He says he can all agree as long as people are unhoused, we need to act with urgency. I'm merely here to be a conduct for that information that the court very wants to get. We're driving over here. City Attorney Mike Fura or however you pronounce his last name. We'll call him Mike. Says he decided to speak personally. He's now talking about a personal interaction he had with unhoused women in his neighborhood. I kind of rolled at my eyes at this story, but I'll read it. Her name is Anne. She told me she was born and raised in Nigeria, Mike says. She was a licensed attorney in Texas and ended up in LA after an abusive relationship. We have programs for women of victims of domestic violence. They instantly put you in a motel room or shelter or a women's group home. But maybe not at that time when she was here. Maybe not. So, I don't know. Later, an abusive relationship, he said, and told him, if your help is sending me to Skid Row, that's not help. And I remember commenting to her saying that, yeah, a lot of social services and our general information line say try Skid Row. Mike said he realized there was no place for miles around his neighborhood where the woman could go. To condense many conversations into one, I said I wanted to help her, Mike said. He got Anne an apartment with a caseworker. Wow. That's the dream, ain't it? For at least many homeless people. An apartment with a caseworker who helped get her a place to live. That's the dream. Anne later emailed Mike to say she was reactivating her Texas law license. She wanted to be a lawyer again, Mike said. She's still working on passing the California bar, he says. And I remember commenting to the reporter that, you know what? I hope she becomes an attorney for the homeless people because the homeless people really need one. All this seriously leads to Mike just point blank telling Judge Carter the court has no business running the city's homeless services. My own view is that elected officials should own that responsibility. That was quite a lead-in for that pushback. Mike says elected officials are elected to deal with problems like homelessness, and he pushes back against the idea of the court mandate. He'll be filing a brief that lays this all out, of course. Mike introduced Meg Beckley, the city's homeless coordinator. Oh boy, here we go. She's still got the floor. Carter asks if she's heard Skid Row's comments about services not getting to the streets. Asks if she's willing to get out on the streets and see this herself. And Barkley says yes. Yeah, she's saying yes in front of a judge, but yeah, away from the judge. Screw that. I know how that works. This isn't going to be a soundbite day, Carter says. Too late. Carter says he's interested in this horrific start we've gotten this year regarding unhoused deaths and services. Now, Mike Bonney of LA is up. He just said something about the micro of Skid Row and the macro of the city. People stop this macro talk. It's not helping, I promise. Bonin says the real measure of success is if how many unhoused have moved into housing and how quickly. He also wants to look at how the city consults with unhoused people about stuff like this that affects them so directly. Contradicting the city attorney of LA, Bonnie says it is urgently important for the court to assume the maximum role that it can. I would encourage the court to take a much larger role, Bonnie says. He references his piece yesterday calling for a consent decree. Again, I agree with the consent decree. But I also mentioned that earlier in this video here that there's lack of a lot of acknowledgement of the root of the problems. Current system is just fundamentally not designed to meet the level of crisis that we're in. It is technically, sir. Like, if information was hard aligned to social workers and outreach teams and nonprofits, I wouldn't have to be trying as a homeless person trying to correct my social worker Because my social worker tells me, oh, there's no rooms available in Parcher Room Key. I said, but the county report says there is. And the tally's done every Tuesday. This last Tuesday. As of this last Tuesday, there's 611 beds available. But the social worker is like, well, I'm only going based on what the county tells me. What I hate about that broad term when they say what the county tells them, I like to know who exactly is telling them. What, their supervisor? Okay, where's their supervisor getting that information from? What, from their supervisor? Okay, where's their supervisor? Why does it have to trickle down? Why isn't it not hardlined? Is what I'm getting at with that. Why is it not just streamed directly to their email or however saying, hey, official press memo from the county, we have 611 rooms available. Get your clients in. That's it. Like, I don't understand why it has to trickle down. And that's what's so frustrating. Bonnie says the real measure of success is how many houses. Okay. Many unhoused have moved into housing and how quickly. He also wants to look at how the city council with unhoused people about stuff like this that affects them so directly. Contradicting City of LA attorney Bonnie says that it's urgently important for the court to assume the maximum role that it can. I would encourage the court to take as much larger role, Bonnie says. He references his pieces yesterday calling for the consent decree. Current system is fundamentally not designed to meet the level of the crisis we're in. Bonnie says he says action is happening, but it's too often feels like it's an exception to the system instead of a product of it. Nobody can force within the government that level of cooperation, Bonnie says. Mayors can't force the council to do anything and vice versa. Carter just called Garcetti's guys back into the tent. Bonnie says there's really are no bad actors or really very few bad actors in this situation. He comes to the defense of LA homeless. Yeah, I commented to her saying, well, why is he then defend? How is Lhasa spending $40,000 on chronically homeless, yet I've only seen less than $100 in 8 years? Come to the defense of that. Obviously, he's not going to. And because, here I am, just some small fry on the internet. They're not worried about me causing a stir. But I guarantee you, if I had like a followership of like Mr. Beast or like a followingship of like PewDiePie or followership of like Dr. Disrespect, I guarantee you these politicians would be pooping out bricks. Knowing that I could cause that much of an uproar. But because again, here I am advocating and trying to educate people on the situation and what can really be done and the truth of the situation. Just starting out is like rough being an advocator because it's really a job of passion without any form of reimbursement of any kind. The reimbursement is that, you create a change. And it's hard, trust me. But sometimes I kind of wish, just sometimes I had like enough social media reach. Maybe the equivalent of like Howard Stern or Larry King. Notable names where I could say something like, hey, I want answers. They'll be like emailing me immediately like, yeah, here's the answers you want, sir. But because, here I am, Joe Blow, nobody. I mean, in all due respect, I am who I am, and I am a somebody to the people that matter in my life. But to these politicians, I'm a nobody. So, it says, problem is there's no one choir director. Not everyone's singing the same song or even the same language, Bonnie says. And not even today to hear show up to practice at the same time. Bonnie says we can't fault LA homeless or Lhasa because they named themselves LA homeless, etc., for not providing services when politicians haven't allowed for their services as needed. I mean, they're making bold claims on Twitter again, spending anywhere between $20,000 on sheltered homeless people and $40,000 on chronically homeless. And yet you're trying to tell me they can't do anything. Yeah, well, out of that 40,000, I only need 25 grand a year. I can feed and do everything else myself. I just need a roof over my head. That's it. If LA doesn't get a consent decree, we're going to end up in the receivership with Carter anyway. Yeah, Carter kind of wants to become the new Caesar of the homeless, which I don't think will work out. He's too narrow-minded. So, while I am support for the consent decree, I'm against it because of Carter. If it was a different person, or if they were going to make a committee of homeless people with actual insight, with actual, have gone through the trenches, have gone through the system, have dealt with the bullshit, people that have actually, like myself, who have actually done everything they can and just keep getting the runaround, then making a council of those people to make decisions on behalf of the decree then would be a good thing. Not have a single-minded judge with a personal agenda. But that's just my opinion. Keep in mind, all this consent decree talk isn't just a lateral thing Carter will do. That's the receivership. There's a very active plaintiff, and any settlement is negotiated with them. And I don't think simply saying I want a consent decree is going to do it for them. Bonnie says a consent decree is a way to preserve some control, but also acknowledge the city needs help. Says cities shouldn't view a decree as a failure at all. Acknowledging needing help is the right step in leadership, Bonnie says. Meg Barkley is back on the mic. Broke away for a few, apparently to contact a fire official about stats Carter is seeking. Now she's back discussing ongoing housing efforts, etc. Next up is Pete White, founder of the LACA network. White says it's important for people to understand what birthed Skid Row. He says that he said he was struck by Carter's reference to Brown versus Board of Education. Skid Row, and this is accurate history, by the way. Skid Row is a place grown out of redlining, White says. Industrialization, the war on black people, the rise of prison industrial complex, NAFTA, political decisions. Race is a powerful determinant of who is literally on the streets and who is inside, Pete White says. This is stirring stuff. Pete is a great speaker and is just really going passionately right now. I can hear a few whoops of support from the back. Pete White, throughout the entire conversation, no black women have been present. Says they need a place here. Pete turns to a woman who's joining him via phone. I didn't get a full name, but I think it's Monique. If anyone knows, please at me. It's a little hard to hear her, but I did hear her ask everyone to please stop congratulating themselves. Maybe that can be a standing invitation at all these things, please. I agree. Yeah, these people are full of shit. They haven't done anything. A pastor now has the mic. Sorry to say I didn't get his name, but he's a pastor around Skid Row. He said they declared an emergency here several years ago. It's been a state of emergency for us for a long time. Pastor gives an example of the broad inequality. If you can get lettuce from the farm workers, how come you can't get the vaccine and prioritize farm workers? Is it because they're brown? That was kind of a bold statement. The pastor says all the talk about shelters is troubling. I get triggered because a shelter is a downgrade from a housing project. He's correct. To whom which is given much is expected. Where is the money? Where are the resources? We need the court to step in and take action, the pastor says. The woman who spoke through Pete White's phone is Monique Knoll, just for your information. Next up is Elizabeth Mitchell, who represents the plaintiffs of LA Alliance. Michelle appreciates what she's heard, but for 11 months we have been hearing platitude and eloquent speeches with not enough action. Key point in Mitchell's comments: everyone says LA needs more resources, but part of the lawsuit is about how LA has wasted the resources it does have. Taxpayers have doled out billions to fix the homelessness crisis. Music has been playing all around us through the hearing, but right now it's the loudest it's been. I think I'm driving myself nuts trying to place this song, one of those 90s jams. It was Pony. Michelle is asking Barclay about what money was used for temporary and emergency shelter and what was relocated for long-term housing. Michelle says that they used the money is not in accordance with what the public was told. Or, I'm sorry, Michelle says how they used the money is not in accordance with what the public was told. Hilariously or sadly, one of Garcia's guys started to duck out of the tent right when this discussion started, and Judge Carter called him back in because maybe he might want to hear this. Michelle is discussing the outrageous cost of LA's housing projects for the unhoused and says there's an issue. Says if the issue is resources, let's do additional briefing on how much money is left and the city's ability to cancel other endeavors to free up money for shelters. Okay. To understand what's going on there is that there's a news article that mentions that the new apartments for the homeless are costing up as high as $750,000 more than a luxurious apartment that you can buy in downtown. So there's that. Michelle reminds us that Measure 8 specifically allotted money for mental health outreach, substance abuse, and basically everything everyone on the streets says just isn't there. Again, ask for further briefing about specific. Sorry, I wish I had something to drink. Atonements, amounts, and direction. Judge Carter approves the briefing order and says it's very well taken. Now, Shane Myers is up. She's a lawyer with the Legal Aid Foundation of LA, and she represents the LACA network in this lawsuit. It's funny. I can't even get legal aid to help me, but, you know. Oh, but lawsuit against the city? Sure, no problem. Legal aid's hot garbage, by the way. By the way, this is my opinion. Anyway, of legal aid. I'm not saying it as a fact. It's just an opinion. Charlotte says rarely does she agree with the plaintiff's attorney here, but she does agree with Michelle that more of the holistic approach is needed, but she strongly disagrees on what approach should be. Charlotte says the shelter system the city has built has contributed to racial inequality, and we can't pretend we're going to address any of this if the city continues to push emergency services that give unhoused people no real path forward. We cannot create emergency shelter beds that we purport to be the solution. That is creating separate systems with no path forward for the tens of thousands of people of color who are unhoused in Los Angeles. Yeah, I comment to her that they can make a small business program, offer $3 million, up to $3 million. But yeah, I can't do something similar for residents and homeless people with jobs with a low APR. I then turn around and use some of that money to buy a home between 200 to 500 grand and be off the streets, which then would produce more money for the tax assessor's office, which would then produce more money for more programs, blah, 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 right? But I guess, I guess my sense of common sense is wrong somehow. Sure, congregate shelters might solve the problem the plaintiffs' LA Alliance wants solved, such as visibility of unhoused people, Charlotte says, but it won't help long-term the people who need it. And it won't keep them off the streets long-term. Charlotte says unhoused people didn't die from a rainstorm. They died because of decades of disengagement and inequality and systematic racism. Charlotte ends with the big cheers from the back. Next up is Heidi Morrison of Lhasa. She says she knows of a lot of available hotel units that could be used if we can just bring everyone together and make it happen. Says she wants swift action and knows that this has gone on too long. Judge Carter and the mayor of LA has emergency powers and a choice on whether to use them. This is again getting into the heart of his briefing order. Carter references Judge Johnson's work in Alabama and says he's wondering if we reach a place in the LA homelessness crisis that warrants far-reaching action on his part. He's going over the briefing order now again. Carter says he gets an impression that Lhasa has a will but not the power to get things done. Maybe you should have a lot more power, Carter says, or maybe you just shouldn't exist. Just from the back for that one. Yeah, I commented agreeing with Carter. Yes, Lhasa shouldn't exist. Lhasa needs to be disbanded. Carter says he's willing. Carter says he's walking a very difficult road if he's going to do anything major. He, of course, wants briefing, and he knows he needs to mull this over closely. Marston says she doesn't know what the answer is either, but she's eager to work with Carter and be a resource for him. Carter says there are so many years of litigation and bad feelings, but if you listen to people, a lot of them are in agreement. Carter read a couple of death stats. Gotta stop now. Martin is done and Abel Bells is up now. We're getting close to the end. Andy's mic is screeching horribly, but Carter assures him, don't worry about that. Andy puts the mic down and says he's glad we're here, but he wishes we could have used this space last week when he and Carter were trying to get those tents up. Andy wants drastic action from Judge Carter. It's time to declare war on homelessness and take immediate, urgent, FEMA-like action. He said he cried all the way home last Friday because he knew none of those women would be getting out of the rain. This is beyond belief. We're living in a twilight zone, and none of us are realizing what is going on our streets. We need you, Judge, and we need you to act now, Abel tells Judge Carter. That's Reverend Andy Bells of the Union Rescue Mission. Very nice man. To give you a little bit of backstory about him, to give you the shortest, quick to the point, to draw his character in the best light as to the type of person he is, he has been working Skid Row for so long that at the time in his younger years, when he would walk up and down Skid Row trying to help as many homeless people as he can and find out what they need and what he can assist them with, during those walks, he ended up getting a bacterial flesh-eating disease, and he lost a leg for it. Now he walks. Last I saw, he walks with supporter crutches, but I think he can do it now without the crutches. The man has literally given up his leg to help the homeless and continues to this day to make that walk up and down Skid Row, helping as many homeless people as he personally can. Okay? The man's heart is in the right place. Unfortunately, his hands are bound based on resources and what's available to him. So yes, he's been doing it for a very long time. So if I was going to ask the public to donate to any charity, it would be his. I'll leave a link in the description to his to the Union Rescue Mission. So if anybody wants to give, they can give on my behalf. KDL introduces Susie Shannon, an executive director of Poverty Matters and health commissioner in Los Angeles. She said what happened Friday with the tents debacle shows the politics of who gets help and who doesn't. That's correct. I agree with that. Shannon is reading her account of what happened on Friday with the tents because she wants it on record and wants accountability. Shannon says that the Downtown Women's Center made it clear they weren't happy with the takeover of their parking lot last Friday. Mind you, this is the parking lot they're at now for the tent endeavor. Leon tried to explain the urgency. They thought a lot could hold 60 women, but the Downtown Women's Center wanted to limit it to 20. Shannon compared the Downtown Women's Center 20 limit to allotment of lifeboats on the Titanic. As this fight was playing out, DeLeon got word that LASA had 120 rooms and would move people in that day. But as it turns out, the rooms weren't available. After 16 hours of work, they were back to square one. Judge Carter had promised 8 women they'd be in hotel rooms that night. But Shannon says it was clear that wasn't going to happen through LASA. So DeLeon and Pastor Don agreed to split the costs of the hotels for the women. Shannon says she helped get the women into a hotel, and the total cost between DeLeon and Pastor Don was around $1,200. What happened on Friday is that a microism of the problem that he meets the entire system, Shannon said. She supports DeLeon, but our city is not capable of governing itself when it comes to homelessness. Now, Carter's asking the LA Fire Department Medical Director Mark Exton about the death rates among unhoused people, specifically Skid Row. How many died on Skid Row in January? Exton says he has yearly data, but not monthly data. Asking about causes, I see an ever-increasing spiral of death, Carter says. Yes, sir. Exton begins. He says, cause of death is a lot of coroner's office. Is left to the coroner. Sorry. Cause of death is left to the coroner's office. Exton says more than not, the cause of death is undetermined. They see a lot of cardiac arrests who are beyond help when paramedics arrive because no bystanders are helping them. My God, what a depressing, grim point. Okay, we're almost done. Judge Carter just called for Amy Turk, the CEO of Downtown Women's Center, to thank her. Turk has the mic and notes that they've been enjoying this space and parking lot for a good 10 years. This is obviously responding to the Friday spat. Turk says Kevin DeLeon is supporting the plans to turn the parking lot into supportive housing units, but regarding the tent spat, with all due respect, Judge Carter, you surprised us last Friday, Turk says. Turk says she never met Judge Carter, but read about him in the LA Times. She was taken back by the push to use their parking lot, but she says she's very much is here to help with the homelessness crisis. No, you're not. You're enjoying making the money. If you look up most of these nonprofits, this president and CEO makes at the very least, the lowest I've seen them take is $200,000 a year. The highest I've seen, I believe, is $240,000. That is supposedly 1% of all the money they get. That's a lot of money for, being given the right to tell people, no, only 20 instead of 60. But I get it. If you didn't let them have their big money and you cut their checks down to like 40 grand a year, they cut out and quit doing what they're doing now. I get it. It's a double-edged sword. But I don't feel they're worth their $200,000. But again, that's an opinion. KDL is less speaker, more macro talk, not yet. DeLeon mentions a 94-unit project planned for this lot, which Turk also mentioned. DeLeon just said granular detail. DeLeon again says the city needs a North Star in its approach to the homelessness crisis. Call for 25,000 units by 2025. Mentions the 17 housing-related motions he's brought forward since taking office a few months ago. DeLeon says Heidi Marson of LASA is a very tough, inevitable position. Yep. What a burden to have a high-paying government job with amazing benefits and apparently little actual expectations, etc. And I agreed with her. Judge Carter, we're going to conclude the session humbly thanking all of you. He says we're starting down exploratory road that starts with the briefs due on the 16th. Am I hopeful for Judge Carter? I want to be. Do I want him to be the new Caesar? No. At the end of the day, I guess my plan is to, I hope in 2022, maybe run for mayor and clean up this mess. That would be my whole campaign, honestly. Try to clean up this nonsense. There's a lot going on and nobody is acknowledging some of the basic stuff. So to get back to where I commented on some of her, like a matter of fact, I mentioned that "Get Me Banned" was a trending hashtag, and I ended up getting like 103 likes because it's the truth. Being homeless got me banned from Starbucks. That's why I use Coffee Bean now. So I asked Bells, what does he think? Do you think PRK is actually open? Between the LA Times coverage saying 611 rooms are open and ready to go, and social workers saying they've been trying for other clients and nothing's open, what is the right or wrong? What way is right or wrong? And he answered me. He says, I go with the social workers, as I just spoke to Hydia Martson, and she is frustrated with the city officials not providing needed funding despite city's hopeful press releases, which was part of what I shared today at the hearing. City leads with press rather than reality. Fake news? Question mark. I said source, and I said then it's the county leaking bad information because figures come from the data released by the Los Angeles County Emergency Operations Center. Tallies are updated each Tuesday. And I thanked him for his time for responding. So if I open this article real quick, you'll see, if I pull it up real quick. Wow, they keep updating this article. Holy moly. It says 611, now it says 628 are ready for someone to move in, and 0 need to be prepared. How many hotels are ready? Officials currently have 2,382 hotel rooms leased across the county. Of those, 1,754 are currently occupied, 628 are ready for someone to move in, and 0 still need to be prepared. Now, if you go to the way at the bottom where they say about the numbers, figures come from the data released by the Los Angeles County Emergency Operations Center. Tallies are updated each Tuesday. So if you click on the link, it takes you to this page. So, yeah, we have to look through the PDFs and the archives, incident updates, things like that. There's a lot of information on this website to ingest. So who knows? Right? And so, yeah, I mentioned that I'm sad that all this was just all talk and no progress forward, obviously. And that's just my opinion. So, according to Reverend Andy Bales, the deaths of people devastated by homelessness last year at this time, 95. So far this year, 165. Deaths of people devastated by homelessness on LA streets are up 74% over the last year. We are far past the tipping point of declaring an emergency, and he's correct. Because I believe I made the comment of like trying not to die, staying alive is a Avoiding death is expensive or something like that. I've been having random conversations with people. So I already mentioned how I tried to reach out to Mike with no response back. Now being homeless got me banned. Already showed that video. This woman reached out to Bales for an interview, congratulated him basically, and said, "Lucky him." But what I am trying to find is very specific responses because I don't want to paraphrase a lot of things. Okay, so I did publicly mention I'm sad that there was no mention of my email to the judge in some form of acknowledgement in regards of public opinion. But at least it is what it is. I tried, is all that matters. And, you know, I am disappointed that the judge didn't make note of any public opinion since this was supposed to be a public meeting, but it's technically a federal case. Who knows? Okay. So I mentioned how Heidi isn't fit for the job and can't even call back. I linked back to a tweet that says, because all this information is public, I mentioned Heidi's direct phone number at LASA. You follow the prompts, no Heidi. And if you call it, she doesn't call you back. So for her to say that she cares and, is trying and blah, 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 I find it hard to believe. Things like that. I do mention that homeless people who have the occasional drink get blackballed from the system, whom have health. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue-tied. Who have health problems and get overlooked, while people who don't want the housing get it but keep a tent by the riverbed anyway. And I quote, and I sourced her the article. And when DeLeon was like, oh, there's no rooms available, I quoted her the article and I told her, I said, is DeLeon trying to say that these numbers are not correct? 600 rooms ready. Figures come from the data released by the Los Angeles County Emergency Operations Center. Tallies are updated each Tuesday. Stuff like that. And I mentioned to her that, yes, LASA shouldn't exist. You call them and they will tell you PRK is full, yet public reports disprove otherwise, like showing 611 rooms ready to go. Also, LASA has an audit that would justify their disabandonment. And I linked to that as well. Yeah, I mentioned she says that, but doesn't answer her own phone at LASA. I give the number, I give the source of the information and where it came from. And I show the public claim where it comes from. Permanent housing is more cost effective. It costs $20,000 per homeless person in a shelter and up to $40,448 in services each year for the chronically homeless, when I've seen less than 100. So that's where I'm like, to be fair, if LASA says they spend $40K on a chronic homeless, how come they don't know how that 2 or 3 people can stay in the same room with an AARP discount at $25K a year? This includes the state stay limit of 28 days per month. Source me because I have the receipts. Yeah. Oh, so the cost of here's the comment I was mentioning. Like where they were talking about in that hearing, the cost of housing and how it's more expensive. I linked her the article that NBC Los Angeles covered, or it's an investigation piece. that the price tag for some of the Los Angeles housing for the homeless is expected to hit a whopping $746,000 per unit, far more than the cost of building some luxury high-rise condos in downtown. Okay. And I mentioned that I mentioned for the resources that this is correct. If the resources were there, me and my traveling companion wouldn't do what we do. It goes out to Penhound to make up for the lack of the supportive services. Whom is disabled? Why work and try to stream some donations on Twitch when I have the chance? The internet has been more than helpful than any county or city program. People outside the U.S. versus local residents and complete strangers. I've even had the chance to meet one of the people I call a friend who has been there with the support who isn't a California resident. Which is true. I've met him during this pandemic, actually. Yeah. And again, I'm telling the reporter someone should ask him, how can you make that claim of yet 40K yet as of homeless person? I only seen less than 100 in services. Defend loss on that fact. Things like that. Then I mentioned to her that the court needs to take action. There is no system in place to oversee and resolve and handle serious claims as outlined here regarding my experience with Project Roomkey. And that's where, again, I mentioned, what does the city and county do when there's serious accusations of mishandling, like with PRK? What about those people who had a chance? Outline my experience here, blah, blah, blah. Supporter, And I mentioned how the supervisor, Sheila Kuhl, defends LASA, saying it's in a statement that the audit did not provide a full and fair analysis because it focused on a single city contract. And I linked to the LASA audit as well. Yeah, so I mentioned to reporters that this is why I have to borrow so much. I'm personally in debt from all the borrowing to try to stay alive to avoid COVID. Work is dead slow thanks to the pandemic. I work out of a temp agency similar to people already. While being a type 2 diabetic and being asthmatic, avoiding death is costly. It is. People don't understand how costly it is to avoid death. Okay, like wearing a mask isn't enough. Being indoors is the answer. But avoiding from catching COVID in any way, shape, or form is very costly. And it's becoming a difficult strain for me. But anyway, I think I've covered everything. I've given my thoughts on what I think of the hearing and the fact that it was just all talk and no action. It was very disappointing. I mean, it is what it is. But go away with the thought knowing that they spend $40,000 in services every year for the chronically homeless. It doesn't matter if it's here in LA or here in some other state or maybe even some other country. Most likely there's a similar issue going on. and it has to stop. Okay. You cannot go publicly on Twitter and make a bold claim like that. And then when you ask a homeless person, hey, what services you've received? And you find out that's less than the amount that they're proclaiming. This is a serious flaw and something that needs to be done. Thank you for listening.